Hi, my name is Mrs. McCann, and I'm going to talk to you guys today a little bit about some regions in colonial America. So I want you to take a minute and think in your heads back to your geography unit, because for each region we're going to talk a little bit about the resources they have, the geography and climate, what each region specialized in, kind of what they were known for. We're going to give some examples of how they also depended on other regions for certain things. We'll talk about their social life and their political life. So your knowledge of the geography of each region is going to be really helpful for this, as well as we look at some of the pictures. We're going to start with the New England colonies. So let's first talk about what resources they had in the New England colonies. Look at the picture that's in front of you. What kind of resources do you see? You might notice there's some trees, so there were a lot of trees in New England as a natural resource. I see some water, so they probably had pretty good access to water with harbors, and fish as well would be a natural resource that they had. What kind of human resources do you think they had? I'll tell you that they had some skilled craftsmen in New England, so what might that be? Maybe a blacksmith? Can you think of some other skilled craftsmen there might be? There are also some shopkeepers where you have skilled craftsmen, you've got shops. And then we also have some shipbuilders, given that we're right on the water there in New England. Some of the capital resources they had were some buildings and tools. They had plenty of that. Let's think about the geography and climate in New England. If you think back to your geography unit, you might remember that the Appalachian Mountains run through New England. So there were some mountains. There also was a very important bodies of water like the Boston Harbor, which was really important for trade and fishing. We have a lot of hilly terrain. The soil is pretty rocky. It's not super great for farming, and a jagged coastline. Our climate in New England is pretty mild to moderate summers, but cold winters. New England specialized in fishing, whaling, shipbuilding, naval supplies, and then manufacturing metal tools and equipment. That makes sense given that they've got good access to the water. However, they definitely depended on other regions for various things. So they depended on the South for certain crops like tobacco, rice, cotton, indigo, other things like that. And then they also depended on different forest products that they had. They had different types of lumber, tar, and pitch. And then they depend on the mid-Atlantic colonies for a lot of their livestock and grains and things that they could farm there. For the social life in New England, they cared a great deal about a religion, and they were kind of organized by villages. Most of the people here believed in religion that was different than the Church of England, but church was still very important in this region. Thinking about the political life in New England, people went to town meetings to discuss or vote on things. Men could vote, but there were sometimes restrictions, like certain restrictions having to do with owning property or being a member of the church. Moving along to the mid-Atlantic colonies, coming a little further south, let's think about what natural resources they would have there. We're thinking like Pennsylvania, New York, colonies around there. So now in the mid-Atlantic colonies, we have some richer farmlands. We've got some good rivers to help out. The human resources in the mid-Atlantic colonies, we do still have some skilled workers, but now we have some unskilled workers as well as some fishermen. And we also have some tools and buildings in this area as well. Thinking about the geography and climate in the mid-Atlantic or the middle colonies, we still have our Appalachian Mountains, but now we're kind of extending into a little bit more of the coastal lowlands. We also have some harbors and bays there, some deep and wide rivers, and much richer farmland than we have in the north. Here we have more mild winters, so a little bit more moderate weather now that we are in the middle or mid-Atlantic colonies. Some things that we specialize in the middle colonies, still fishing, because all the colonies are right there kind of on the water. Grains, because we have better land for farming, as well as raising livestock, but they still depended on other regions for what they have as well. So again, the Mid-Atlantic colonies are also depending on the South for their tobacco and rice and cotton and indigo and their forest products. And then they're going to depend on New England for their metal tools from their factories and some of their equipment that they produce there with their more skilled labor. The social life in the middle colonies, we also have villages here, but also some bigger cities. People in the Mid-Atlantic colonies had very diverse lifestyles, and there was also a lot more diverse religions here in the middle colonies, a little more open to other religions. For the political life, we are organized a little bit more in market towns. Towns become centers of trade, and those kind of became leaders, those who were successful in those market towns. Moving along to our southern colonies, so now we're thinking like Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and even your very own Virginia. What are some of the natural resources we know we have in the southern colonies? We've got much more fertile farmland now in the South. Lots of rivers, a lot of harbors. So now the human resources we have are a lot of farmers. Farms are going to be a really important thing now in the southern colonies. Another human resource they have are enslaved African Americans who are doing a lot of the farming. They also have tools and buildings as their capital resource. So let's think about the geography and climate now of the southern colonies. Again, we still have our Appalachian Mountains. This does include the Piedmont region as well, but we also have the coastal plains region. So think back to our geography unit and what you know about the coastal plains. But now we have really good harbors again, and we have rivers. Our climate, though, is much different now than it was in New England. Now we've got really a humid climate. Think about Virginia and North and South Carolina in the summertime. Pretty humid now, mild winters, although this winter might make you think that we don't have mild winters in this area, but in general we tend to have mild winters, pretty hot summers. So when you think about the geography and climate of the southern colonies, you can think about the state that you live in. What are some things that the southern colonies specialized in? You may have gathered already that when you heard that other colonies or other regions were dependent on the South, you may be guessing tobacco, rice, and you'd be right. So tobacco, rice, cotton, indigo, certain forest products are different than what they have in the other regions. So as you probably guessed, they're going to be dependent on the Middle and New England colonies for what they have. So they definitely depend on New England for their manufactured goods from their skilled laborers, metal tools, equipment, and then they're going to depend on the middle colonies for the grains that they can grow there based on their geography and climate, and anything else that they can't get a lot of in the South. So each region has their specialties, but they are also very dependent on the specialties in other regions. Let's talk a little bit about the social life in the southern colonies. As you probably know, I know you've studied a great deal about Virginia and some of the southern colonies. People lived and worked on plantations. That was a pretty important part of the social life in the southern colonies. Lots of mansions, wealthy people owning slaves or indentured servants with really, really large farms. Not quite as many schools or cities in the South. So the social life is a lot more centered around these plantations. Thinking about the political life, southern colonies weren't really divided up into towns or cities the way some of the northern colonies are. We are now divided up into counties, and that's kind of how politics in the South played out there. So that was a really quick overview and very brief overview of kind of what some of the specialties and geography and climate and resources are in each of the colonies. So as we generalize about this, we think about each of the areas of the colonial area. So when we're thinking about New England, we are really thinking about Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Hampshire. When we think about the middle colonies or the mid-Atlantic colonies, we're coming on down about with New York and Pennsylvania, New Jersey and Delaware. And then when we're thinking about the southern colonies, again, we're thinking of more Maryland and Virginia, North and South Carolina, and Georgia. So hope you learned a few details about some of the colonial regions. Again, these are pretty big generalizations. Hopefully in your classes you will get into great discussions about kind of what the culture and climate was like in each of the regions, and hopefully you'll get to research these regions even more, or the individual colonies even more, and learn a lot more about them. So thanks for listening, and I hope to be chatting with you again sometime through another video.